City Center Radio. It is episode 257, and I am your host, Christian Sanger. Today is Monday, May 27th, 2024. A monkey is on the loose in Walterboro, and that's kind of been what people are talking about. But there's so many big stories to get you caught up on. I hope you had a good weekend. And as of this recording, that missing primate is still very much on the loose. I'm sure he had an amazing weekend, being able to be free and out and about, and I'll talk about that more in a moment. I hope you all had an awesome weekend. You know, we had a little bit of rain here and there, but for the most part, very warm and nice out, and I hope you all enjoyed. I know there was some downpours and some sprinkles and some things that affected a few events, but hopefully you were still able to have a great weekend if some of your, plans got postponed or what have you. But yeah, here we are, Monday, starting of a new week, and I hope it goes well for you. Pretty boring weekend for me. I mean, don't get me wrong, it was fine. I had fun, but nothing exciting to report on. No events, no concerts, nothing. Just did some work, kind of laid low, did stuff around the house. But yeah, nothing exciting to report on. And so since we have so many stories to get to, I'm not going to waste any more time. Let's go. So yes, as I mentioned at the top, the search for a missing primate continued Saturday and now into Sunday as well, out in the Walterboro area. Apparently, there's a 15-year-old macaque, which is a type of monkey. There were reports they were calling an ape, a primate. These seem to be different terms, of course. I think there's a difference between ape and monkey. I don't know what it is, so I'm just going to go with monkey or primate, as that is what it appears to be going on. But in any event, apparently, this monkey was being kept as a pet and somehow had gotten out of its enclosure, house, wherever it's kept. So they've been searching for it since, I believe, Friday is when the news started, but they actually believe that the monkey's been loose since at least Thursday. Originally, the animal's owner thought that they would be able to find the monkey using their own tactics and didn't think they needed any assistance. But, after some time had passed, they finally got officials involved, so police, animal control, things like that. And they're working to capture the animal and bring it back. However, police on Sunday said that the interest from the public, who of course, just unsurprisingly, is very invested in this, and this is a unique and bizarre story. They're out there and they might see the monkey, and then they're taking videos and pictures of it and stuff. But police are saying that may be hampering the efforts, and potentially causing more stress to the primate. It is on the loose. It's been kept as a pet, so it's probably scared. There's a lot of things it's unfamiliar with. And then when people are, sort of approaching it or trying to get photos and videos, it may be scaring the monkey away. So they're asking, to stay away if you can. But if you see the monkey, to call the Colleton County Sheriff's Office at 843-549-2211. As I said, they believe the animal's been on the loose since Thursday, and as of this recording, still very much on the run. So we'll see how long this whole process lasts. However it ends, just hopefully the animal is okay and will be okay. So hopefully they get back home. Who knows if it's able to live out on its own with any success. So hopefully it's found and everything is okay. I'll certainly keep you updated. All right, on to some more serious news. This is news. Some of this has been going on for a while, and because of interviews and taking some episodes off, been a little delayed getting this news out. This one's not that old, though. It did occur on Thursday. The U.S. Supreme Court on Thursday ruled that Republicans in South Carolina did not unlawfully consider race when they drew a congressional district in a way that removed thousands of black voters. That decision, of course, will make it harder for civil rights plaintiffs to bring racial gerrymandering claims, forward after this ruling. So this was a surprising, not surprising ruling. When a court here in South Carolina said, yeah, this was clearly racially gerrymandered. And this is District 1 we're talking about, which is the seat Representative Nancy Mace currently holds. Here in South Carolina, the court decided, yeah, this is clearly racially gerrymandered. It was appealed, got to the Supreme Court, And as this court is wont to do, they ignore a lot of norms and precedents and everything else, and voted along ideological lines 6-3. So the conservative majority on the court all voted that no, this is totally fine. Whereas the three more liberal side of the court, members of the court, said, yeah, no, this should be upheld. This is clearly racially gerrymandered. So Judge Samuel Alito, who has been facing some controversies over some right-wing flags that he has flown on his various properties, that's come out in the news. You can look into that further if you're not familiar with it. He blamed the first incident on his wife and has given no explanation for the second incident, which a lot of people think he should be recusing himself from certain cases based on his clear uh, bias, even though we already know who's conservative and liberal on these cases. You know, they're not supposed to be doing things like flying flags specific to a right-wing movement or a left-wing movement or whatever it may be. So let's just keep that in the background. He wrote the majority opinion here, basically saying that legislators should be given the benefit of the doubt when they face claims that maps have been drawn with discriminatory intent. So it's basically like, hey, did they say they did this on purpose? They said they didn't. Yeah, let's give them the benefit of the doubt. No problems here. Like, it just, that's not how things are supposed to work. You can give them the benefit of the doubt, but you still have to look into the case. So that response is going to just make it harder for these things to be claimed, and in either direction. This is now open season basically for either party, depending on who holds the majority in states and cities and whatnot. They get to draw congressional maps every few years. And now they can just kind of do it with impunity, because you are, believe it or not, you are allowed to gerrymander districts uh, in a way that will benefit you politically. However, you're not supposed to take things like race into account. But in the South, as the numbers show, Black voters tend to be Democrats. So it's going to be difficult to separate race from politics. So you can politically gerrymander. You're not supposed to racially do it. But when you have a group, and this, again, this is different in every state, just in the South, this is just how it tends to be. Black voters tend to be Democrats. So how do you determine that this was not a racial thing? It was a political thing. Also, the fact that you're allowed to gerrymander at all is kind of ridiculous, but whatever. There's it's neither here nor there. And now they can just blatantly do it. And as long as no one is dumb enough to come out and say, "Oh no, we did this to dilute a certain race's vote," oh no, we did this. This was all racially motivated. So unless someone's dumb enough to do that, the Supreme Court basically was like, yeah, you just got to give them the benefit of the doubt. Unless there's like solid proof, something written down, something someone said, it just seems like you're going to be able to get away with this, which again is ridiculous. But such is the case with this court. Liberal Justice Elena Kagan wrote the minority opinion, which was the dissent against this decision, writing that the majority in the court had basically stacked the deck against any challengers by saying evidence about the impact on Black voters can just easily be sidestepped if the state can offer an alternative narrative that insists voters were divvied up based on partisan interests. So no, it just so happens all these Black people have been taken out of a district. It's not because of their race. It's because of, we'll call them partisan interests. It's ridiculous. So just a shocking, but at the same time, like I said, with this case, this court, are you really that shocked? So that's where we're at. It wouldn't really have affected this current upcoming election because, as we've talked about before, it was already ruled that because this was taking a while to decide, it would take too long perhaps to redraw before the next election. So even if the Supreme Court decided that, yes, this indeed was racially gerrymandered, we were still going to be voting here in this state with that gerrymandered district. So that was going to happen this election anyway, but obviously this affects things going forward, as it's going to make it easier and easier to gerrymander along racial lines, as long as you can present something that seems plausible enough that that's not what you did. So be prepared for a lot more of that going forward. All right, we've got some updates about Boeing. Of course, here in South Carolina, a lot of the talk has been about a whistleblower who died by suicide. Some people wondering if that was actually the case. There was also another whistleblower in another state who died recently after having a deadly infection. And that just kind of ramped up everything. Regardless of what people think as far as conspiracies, it's clear Boeing is in trouble. In addition to some of the recent issues you've seen in the news, what happened recently is the Department of Justice came out and put them on notice, basically saying that Boeing had violated a 2021 settlement that protected it from criminal charges tied to the fatal 737 MAX crashes that happened. Now, because the Department of Justice says that they have violated that settlement, this could potentially open the company up to some prosecution here in the U.S. Federal prosecutors said in the court filing in Texas they are still determining how exactly they want to proceed with this, and that Boeing will have 30 days to respond. So according to the Justice Department, the airplane manufacturer broke the agreement by, quote, failing to design, implement, and enforce a compliance and ethics program to prevent and detect violations of the U.S. fraud laws throughout its operations, end quote. Boeing has denied those claims, but they have that 30 days, I'm assuming, to put together an official response to the Department of Justice instead of just a blanket denial. So back in January of 2021, Boeing agreed to pay $2.5 billion to settle a conspiracy charge with the Justice Department. After a 2-year probe, the Department of Justice accused the company of concealing information about its MAX plane that had been involved in 2 crashes that claimed the lives of all 346 people on board. Boeing had admitted that 2 of its 737 MAX technical pilots, deceived the Federal Aviation Administration about the capabilities of a flight control system on the planes that was later implicated in the 2 crashes. So that's where that settlement was, to get out of the criminal charges. They made this agreement where they paid that money, but they had to make sure going forward, they were fixing some of the issues that potentially led to those crashes. And the Department of Justice is claiming they have not done that. So this could potentially open them up to criminal prosecution related to those crashes. There's been no update since this came out, I think 2 weeks ago now. So I'll certainly keep you updated. It could be a very, very tough go of it for Boeing going forward. And yeah, it just seems the news for them gets worse and worse. All right, related to Boeing, there was an update on the death of John Barnett. He was the known Boeing whistleblower, the one I mentioned in the last story about having died by suicide. Now, a lot of people were like, oh, sure, no, Boeing's behind this, et cetera, et cetera. Well, the Charleston Police Department has finally released some information related to the case, some evidence, as well as the coroner officially ruling that Barnett did, in fact, die by suicide. So, there were some documents, including a note that was found in his car that does appear to be a suicide note that was presented in evidence that has been given to local media. You can click the link in the show notes to get even more information. But the bottom line is Barnett, 62, he died back on March 9th from what the police said at the time appeared to be a self-inflicted gunshot wound. The Charleston County Coroner's Office said that as well. That was their initial information they gave out before doing a full-on, autopsy and as far as the police doing a full investigation. So despite those rumors that were circulating specifically online, the evidence that the police released does appear to back up the claim that he did indeed die by suicide. That documentation included security footage from the Round Holiday Inn on Savannah Highway. That is where he was staying while giving a deposition related to the Boeing, of him being a whistleblower, and he was speaking with lawyers and giving information about what he had seen. And so he was staying there. So security footage from there was reviewed by law enforcement, and it shows his movements on the night of March 8th, obviously the night before he dies. He entered the hotel alone at 7:26 p.m., went to his room at 7:36 p.m., and then was last seen exiting the building by himself at 8:37 p.m. So as far as him in and out of the hotel before going to his car, no one's following him. There doesn't seem to be anything suspicious. So security video picks up outside the hotel, where police see him getting into his vehicle. He then reverses that vehicle into a parking space around 8:45 p.m. Leaves the hotel at 8:37, gets in his car around 8:45. Uh, no one was seen in that car besides him. The car remained stationary until the morning when a wellness check was called, when lawyers couldn't get a hold of him, and then police looked into, is he at the hotel? Where could he be? They find his car and his body inside. So no one on the video. They don't see anyone enter the car. They don't see anything on the video at all to suggest that Mr. Barnett was not alone. As far as the scene itself, the police said that the fatal gunshot wound to his head was done so at close range while he was inside his locked vehicle. So the vehicle was also locked. There was no evidence of any forced entry or signs of a struggle or anything like that. They did find the vehicle's key in Barnett's pants pocket, so it's not like that was missing or anything. They said the gun was found in his right hand, and that ballistic analysis verified that the recovered bullet came from that gun. They also, like I said, provided a copy of the note that included messages to family and definitely a lot of hate towards Boeing, which makes sense. The investigator said that the note suggested Barnett was going through a serious personal distress. And if you look at the note, it does seem like someone who wrote it is in distress of some kind. They also did fingerprint analysis that confirmed that Mr. Barnett's fingerprints are on the notebook that had the note in it. There were 3 prints that were inconclusive due to insufficient detail for identification, but all fingerprints that they did recover on the page itself were also Mr. Barnett's, no one else's. The Charleston County Coroner's Office also looked into his medical records, interviewed family members, attorneys, and some others close to him to try to see what his mental state was. They did say he's been under chronic stress related to this lawsuit, and he suffered from anxiety and post-traumatic stress. He was also grieving the death of his wife that occurred recently. Police also said Barnett appeared to have longstanding mental health challenges, which got worse, as this legal proceedings were going forward in this whistleblower case. So it does appear with the evidence, this is a death by suicide. I know that won't quell any of the conspiracy theorists out there, of course, but that is the official story and some of the supporting evidence related to that. Now, before we move on, I haven't done this before, but it seems appropriate when discussing stories like suicide. Maybe I should be giving a content warning beforehand or something to let you all know. And I apologize I didn't do that. But I also will be putting a link in the show notes and any kind of stories where we discuss suicide with some information that, about how you can seek help by calling or texting the National Suicide and Crisis Lifeline at 988, or you can chat online at 988lifeline.org. So if you need some help, maybe someone needs help, the National Suicide and Crisis Lifeline is there to assist. And if you are going through something like that or know someone who is, I encourage you to get the necessary help in contacting those folks. A couple stories came out that kind of, one outright shows the differences that people are going through as far as over the years as it relates to money and living situations here in the Charleston area. And the other story kind of provides an anecdotal evidence of some of the challenges that people are facing. I mean, we long have talked about how it's very expensive to live in Charleston. Some of the prices, especially downtown, and also when you compare the price versus the space and like the quality of where you're living, is a little bonkers sometimes. So the first story, and I'm not going to get in big detail, but I do encourage you to read the story from the Post and Courier. The link is in the show notes. Has to do with rising incomes over the years. It's changed so much in Charleston in a short amount of time that what it means to be low income in this city and across South Carolina, has dramatically changed. Charleston in particular has the highest median income in the state. So obviously this is where it's the most difficult to live and find places to live and how to have any extra income or anything. So now someone in the Charleston area who is making $58,900. So basically anything below $59,000, you are now considered low income. So that was a story that came out. A lot of people who saw that were kind of like, wow, yeah, I mean, I that's higher than I thought the number would be. You would think low income, oh, and it would be this amount. But making nearly $60,000 a year, you're considered low income. I think some people didn't realize it was that high, but that is what it has come to here in this area. And, with a lot of the people who work in the city, whether it's food and bev, tourism, etc., many of those employees, I mean, we don't know the numbers, of course, specifically, but they make less than that. And that's why so many of them can't afford to live downtown. Some of them can't even live very close to downtown even, and have to have long commutes, but then of course they're paying for gas and parking and all that other stuff. So that was the first story. The second story is about how some local businesses and business owners are trying to help with that situation in a way. Um, of course, they're not paying their employees more, but this is still a good effort by at least one person. The owner of Sweetgrass Pharmacy, her name is Cynthia Feldman. She told the Post and Courier that she's been struggling to recruit staff for her Mount Pleasant pharmacies as rents and home prices in the town are just getting harder and harder for people to reach. So, after hearing about all that, she decided to purchase 3 townhomes in the Twin Rivers Towns, which is a 72 unit community off Highway 41. It's just across the Wando River from Mount Pleasant, so nearby where a lot of the pharmacies are. Those homes start in the mid $300,000 range. So she purchased those, and she will now rent them to her staff at below market rates, and is even considering buying more. Similarly, Roper St. Francis Hospital has been hearing some of the same issues as it refers to housing in Mount Pleasant, and it's made it harder for them to keep or hire employees. So they are now looking for proposals to build housing on its campus, which is in northern Mount Pleasant, so they could offer an affordable solution to some of their employees. So, a little bit more specifically, in the last 3 years, from 2021 through 2023, rents in South Carolina have gone up by 28% and by more than 40% in Mount Pleasant. This is according to data from Apartment List that the Post and Courier got. So, just a demonstration of how tough it is for people. It's one thing to say, hey, it's expensive to live here in this particular city. You could live somewhere, obviously you go live somewhere that you can afford. But when you uh, don't have that option for whatever reason, or you have a specific job that you want or you need, or you have had, but things have changed around you, no fault of your own, rent prices go up and everything. It's tougher and tougher for people to keep certain jobs, and they have to make changes. And you know, I wish that business owners would just pay their employees more so they can get what's a living wage, of course. But at least this whole housing idea is something. And I'm sure, and look, I get it. It's not, you can't compare everything one to one here. This person buying townhomes and renting them, I'm sure financially makes more sense for her than to give all her employees really big raises. These are two different things. I get that. I wish it was a lot easier and they could just pay more and not have to do this whole thing, of course. But at least she's attempting something, some way to be able to say, hey, yeah, I know it's expensive to work here, but did you know my employees can live in this place and it's below market price? It's more affordable. So again, I would hope that we come to a much better solution than this, or rates pay starts to match what you need to live in this area. But I'm not going to hold my breath on that. But hopefully we can find some sort of solutions. Whether it's affordable housing in whatever capacity that means, if it's changing what it means to qualify for what's called workforce housing, which is when if you make below a certain amount of money, you can get discounted rates. There's a whole thing with the city of Charleston that they have an option to do this or not, and if they don't do it, um, these properties, apartments and condos, they have to pay like a fine, not a fine, but they pay something that goes into the city's affordable housing initiatives, or they can offer a certain percentage of their apartments or condos at a discounted rate for those folks who qualify for workforce. So, there are some things out there, but hopefully we'll find more, because this is not a sustainable situation whatsoever. We've got an Alec Murdaugh update. He was apparently involved in a fight at jail. He has been in the Richland County Jail, or while he was awaiting trial, excuse me, in the Richland County Jail. This is an older incident. He apparently got into a fight with a man who was charged with burglarizing, not an easy word to say, and sexually assaulting one of Murdaugh's nieces. So the fight was disclosed by that niece in a recent TEDx talk that she had done and is posted on YouTube. In the video, she's discussing how she worked her way through that triple trauma of depression, being the survivor of this brutal assault while a college student in Colombia, and of course, being a member of a family at the center of this insane, media frenzy when Alec was going through the trial and everything else. So but part of that talk, she mentioned that fight, and it was looked into by local media. Specifically, the state newspaper had this information first. They did get some sources that wanted to remain anonymous. Makes sense. They're probably with the jail and can get in trouble talking about things they're not supposed to. But they confirmed that the fight did, in fact, happen. Oddly, they said that the other guy started it. He came up to Alec. They were in an open area. Um, you know, uh, Gen Pop, as you may know it, somewhere where they were allowed to mingle at the time. And he actually went up to Alec and tried to tell him how Alec's family is framing him. So he was actually coming up saying, "This didn't happen. I didn't do this. You're framing me." And that's when the fight started. And apparently it went on for some time. And both of them got, fairly beat up during this process, according to one of the sources. They said the jail was even somewhat chagrined that they had them together. They were never put together again after that, though. So they are saying that there's some low staff there, and that's part of the reason this fight went on a little too long. I mean, I guess we'll take them at their word, but they should not have been together, obviously. And the fight should have been broken up quicker. Now, look, I know we're talking about two guys who you're about to hear the second guy's convictions, but they've been convicted of some pretty horrific things. So I know we're like, do we really feel that bad for people? But nonetheless, so the guy that Murdaugh fought with, his name is Robert Drayton. He's 42 years old, and he is now serving a life sentence for burglary, plus two 30-year sentences for kidnapping and criminal sexual conduct. He is not eligible for parole. In the last story, Charleston's Shovel and Rope. You may remember this band. They're a duo here in Charleston, and they are behind the High Water Music Festival. Well, they announced on May 24th that they are ending their partnership with the High Water Festival, which is held each year at Riverfront Park in North Charleston. For those unfamiliar, it's a two-day event, a Saturday and Sunday every March. Usually alternative type music, all different genres, but specifically they tend to be more bending towards alternative. It's been here in Charleston since 2017. Due to the pandemic, they took 2020 and 2021 off, but otherwise they've had this festival every year since 2017. But Shovels and Rope, who is actually musicians Carrie Ann Hurst and Michael Trent, they created the festival and have served as curators and partners, so they're behind the scenes helping get bands to come play and all this other stuff. But they've decided to end that partnership. They put a statement on social media. It seems everything is fine between the two groups. The bands even said something along the lines of, this is a amicable split, basically. There's no ill will. They've just decided as a band to move on. Basically, in that statement, they pointed to music festival economics as being a little tough to deal with. And they said that the moves that really all festivals have had to make in recent years to make the economics work have also pulled this particular event in a direction that they say is out of the reach of what their vision for High Water was and hoped it could remain. And that's pretty much the closest we got to an explanation. It seems that with everything, putting on these, big festivals costs a lot of money. And I'm sure, just like anything else, whether it was inflation or corporate greed of driving up prices when they felt like they could, it's probably getting harder and harder to keep it a more, not that it was ever envisioned to be a small event, but it's seeming to get bigger and bigger. And there's a lot of things when they get involved in the music industry and things. I'm sure there's a lot of headaches and big changes behind the scenes. So it appears that's what it is that they just didn't want to deal with whatever the behind the scenes stuff was. Maybe some of the things they had to offer, whether it was ticket prices or things on site, were not what they were hoping they would be. And so they're going to get out and just not have their name associated with the festival anymore. Uh, as far as will it continue, it seems the way they were saying that their partners in this would likely continue on doing the festival, but there hasn't been any official word yet. So we'll see if that ultimately changes. Maybe they decide, hey, we can't go forward without shovels and rope. They were the driving force behind this. I mean, who knows? And maybe they continue it, as it does seem to be a moneymaker for them, despite some headaches this year with traffic and parking and some bad feedback from attendees based on that. So we'll see what happens, but it does appear High Water is going to continue into the future. It just won't have Shovels and Rope as a partner and curator for it anymore. And that'll do it for this edition of Holy City Center Radio. Thank you so much for joining me. I know it was another somewhat longer one as we've caught up on all the stories on Friday and today, but I believe we were all caught up on the old stories, although I'm sure there will be new ones and we can get back to a little shorter episodes. We'll be back on Wednesday. Speaking of next episodes, can't wait to talk to you all then. And a big thank you to Lindsay Marie Collins with LMC Soundsystem for producing this and every episode of Holy City Center Radio. And of course, Tyler Boone deserves a thank you as well, as his music is heard in each and every show. Have a great start to your week. I'll talk to you again on Wednesday. Until then, good night and good luck.